He was the kind of man every woman prayed for, gentle, reliable, loyal to the bone. He never raised his voice, never came home drunk, never forgot our anniversary. In public, he was proud to call me his wife. In private, he worshipped the ground I walked on. He held me like I was made of porcelain and spoke to me like I was poetry. He worked tirelessly to make sure we had everything we needed. I had everything a woman could ask for, everything except the one thing I could never admit out loud. Desire. Not the kind you feel after a nice dinner and wine. No, this was darker, deeper, and desperate. The kind that gnaws at your insides when your soul feels untouched and your body feels forgotten. And that night, when I told him I needed some space, I did not even know what I was asking for. I just knew I needed something, or someone. I lied. I told him it was to think, to breathe, to figure myself out. But deep down, I had already crossed the line in my heart. That night, I stepped out not for air, but for fire. And what I found was a stranger, whose touch melted away my conscience and whose eyes made me forget the life I had built. One night. One mistake. One decision that would haunt everything that came after. Before I begin, I want to sincerely appreciate all my subscribers. You are the reason I keep pouring my soul into these stories. To all the new and returning viewers who have not yet subscribed, thank you for being here. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button, it is the fuel that powers this channel. Do not forget to engage in the comments. I truly want to know your thoughts, your pain, your reactions, your reflections. Now, let me take you back to how everything fell apart. My name is Rachel, a 39-year-old wife, mother of 2, and a woman who made one decision that detonated a bomb in the middle of her perfect suburban life. I live, or used to live, in a quiet neighborhood just outside Atlanta, Georgia. My husband, Mark, is 41. He is the kind of man who makes other men look lazy. A high school math teacher by day, a hands-on father by night, and my biggest cheerleader every step of the way. We met in college. Fell in love too fast, married too young, and built a life that looked so polished on the outside it could have been printed on a Hallmark card. But something about me never quite settled. Maybe it was the years of playing wife and mom while losing sight of the woman I used to be. Or maybe it was because Mark, as good as he was, stopped seeing the parts of me that needed to be touched without being asked, needed to be desired without being scheduled. So, one evening, Thursday, I remember, I looked at Mark as he folded laundry on the couch while the kids watched cartoons in the next room, and I said those words. I need space. He paused. His hands trembled slightly as he set down the t-shirt he had been folding. His voice cracked when he asked if I meant I wanted a separation. I shook my head and lied to his face. I told him it was not like that. I just needed time to clear my head. I had been stressed. Tired. Overwhelmed. He nodded. Trusted me. Because that is what Mark did. He trusted. I packed an overnight bag that same night and booked a hotel downtown. I told him it was just one night. Time for myself. But when I got there, I never turned on the TV. I poured a drink from the minibar. Then another. Then I opened an old dating app one had never deleted. Just to look. Just to feel seen. His name was Daniel. Tall, dark eyes, with a smile that felt dangerous. He was in town for a work conference. A divorcee. No attachments. No expectations. Just presence. We met at the hotel bar. I told him I was just getting out of something messy. He told me he did not want to complicate anything. That night, we did not just break the rules. We shredded them. The guilt only came after. In waves. In echoes. The next morning, I showered twice. Scrubbed my skin until it stung. Cried in the car before driving home. Mark was in the kitchen cooking breakfast. He kissed me on the forehead and asked if I was feeling better. I nodded and said yes. But I was not. Because I had changed. The problem with secrets is they grow roots. You think you have buried them deep, but they claw their way back to the surface. And over the weeks that followed, I became someone else. Quiet. Restless. Angry for no reason. Needy, but cold. Mark noticed, but he did not push. He tried harder. More date nights. Surprise flowers. Compliments. And it only made it worse. Because I had betrayed a good man. Not just with my body, but with my soul. I wish I could say it was just one night. But Daniel messaged me again. And I responded. I was spiraling. Fast. And I did not know how to stop. But the thing about affairs is, they never stay hidden. And someone was watching. I remember staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror as I pulled into our driveway. I looked like Rachel, the same brown hair, the same freckled cheeks, the same tired blue eyes. But inside, something had fractured. I had crossed a boundary I swore I never would. The guilt felt like a slow acid, eating away at every good part left in me. That night was supposed to be a release. A momentary escape. But instead, I had opened a door that would never truly close. I kept telling myself it was just a one-time thing. Just a weak, impulsive act from someone overwhelmed by motherhood, work, and a lack of affection. But that was another lie. Because deep down, I had felt alive in a way I had not in years. And that terrified me. Mark met me at the door with open arms. The kids had made me a welcome back, mommy card with crayons. He had cooked dinner, spaghetti, my favorite. He poured me wine, smiled like nothing had changed. Because to him, nothing had. He had no idea his wife had betrayed him while he folded laundry and kissed pictures of our children goodnight. I played the role. Laughed at the dinner table. Told stories. Kissed the kids goodnight. But when Mark touched my waist later that evening, I flinched. He noticed. I blamed it on exhaustion. He believed me. Again. But as the days passed, the weight of what I had done clung to me like a second skin. I could not shake the images of Daniel's hands. His scent. The way he looked at me like I was still desirable, not just someone's wife or someone's mom. It haunted me, not just because it was wrong, but because it felt so good. I should have blocked his number. I should have deleted the app. But I did not. Instead, I found myself rereading our messages late at night, heart pounding at every ping, every thinking of you text. 2 weeks after our first encounter, Daniel messaged again. In town one more night. No expectations. Just dinner. You choose. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. My finger hovered over delete. Instead, I typed, 1 hour. That's it. It was never just 1 hour. That second meeting sealed my descent. We met at a dim-lit steakhouse across town. Far from the neighborhoods where someone might recognize me. I wore a navy dress that Mark had bought me for our anniversary 2 years ago. He said it brought out my eyes. And yet there I was, wearing it for another man. Dinner led to drinks. Drinks led to the hotel. The hotel led to me ripping away what little dignity I had left. The next morning, I was not the same woman. I was not even pretending to be. I drove home in silence. I passed a church and wanted to scream. I passed a mother walking her child and wanted to disappear. I walked into our home and greeted my children with a hollow smile that even they seemed to sense was off. Mark was in the backyard trimming the bushes. I watched him through the window. He had a smudge of dirt on his cheek and a quiet contentment in his movements. He loved his life. He loved me. And I had broken him without him even knowing it. For a while, I convinced myself I could control it. That it was a phase. That I would end it before it got worse. But secrets, they do not sit still. They move. They breathe. They whisper. They rot. I became short with Mark. Distant with the kids. My smiles were timed, my laughter rehearsed. Every time Daniel messaged me, I felt a sick blend of shame and excitement. Like I was dangling over a cliff and loving the feeling of almost falling. Mark noticed the changes. He asked me if I was okay. I told him yes. He asked if we needed counseling. I told him no. He asked if there was someone else. I looked him in the eyes and lied. No. There is no one else. He hugged me after that. Said he trusted me. Said he knew I was just going through something. That he was willing to wait for me to come back to him. That was the moment that broke me. Not the affair. Not the lies. But his trust. That kind of love, the blind, unconditional kind, was the knife that twisted deepest. Because I did not deserve it. And he had no idea how far I had fallen. Then one morning, something unexpected happened. A neighbor, Lena, a woman I barely knew but always waved at during school drop-offs, approached me in the grocery store parking lot. She smiled politely, then leaned in. You know, hotels have a lot of cameras. And this town talks. My blood turned to ice. I smiled back, as if I did not understand. She did not elaborate. She did not need to. I drove home with shaking hands. Because now, I knew the clock was ticking. Someone knew. And secrets never stay secrets forever. That night, I could not sleep. Mark lay beside me, his breathing slow, his hand resting gently on my hip. And for the first time in weeks, I cried silently into the pillow, knowing full well that my house of cards was crumbling. And soon, everyone would see the mess beneath the illusion. I used to believe that lies, if carefully hidden, could protect what was good. That by keeping the truth buried, I was sparing my family, preserving the life I had built. But what no one ever tells you is that secrets grow. They fester. They start to rot the roots of everything you love until even the most beautiful things begin to crumble from within. After Lena's warning, I lived in constant fear. Every knock on the door made my heart stop. Every unknown number on my phone brought a fresh wave of panic. I began to wonder who else might know. Who had seen what? Who was watching? I started pulling away from Daniel. Not abruptly, just slowly enough to not raise suspicion. I ignored a few texts. Declined a late-night call. Told him I was busy or tired or needed space. And while a part of me hoped that would be the end, he replied with the words I feared most. I am not letting this go, Rachel. I know you feel what I feel. I did. That was the problem. But I could not afford to feel it anymore. Mark started planning a family weekend to the lake. Something to reconnect, he said. Just the four of us, no distractions, no phones. I agreed, hoping the change of scenery might clear my mind, hoping maybe I could find the woman I used to be before all of this started. The first night at the lake house was peaceful. The kids skipped rocks by the shore. Mark grilled steaks while I made salad. For a brief moment, we were a family again, untouched by betrayal, untouched by guilt. But the peace did not last. Because while Mark tucked the kids into their bunk beds, I stepped outside to breathe. And that was when I saw it, a text from Daniel. Do they know what you did 2 nights before Valentine's Day? I could tell them. My blood ran cold. My hands shook. It was no longer a flirtation. It was a threat. I stared at the glowing screen beneath the moonlight and realized. This was not just an affair anymore. This was blackmail. This was war. I did not respond. I deleted the message. I deleted the thread. But deleting the words did not erase their meaning. I knew Daniel. He was charming, but he had an edge. There was something dangerous behind his smile, something I had chosen to ignore because I was too desperate to feel desired. The next morning, Mark noticed my mood. He asked if I was okay. I lied again. But by evening, everything began to unravel. While cleaning up after dinner, I accidentally left my phone on the kitchen counter. I had forgotten Daniel's name was saved as Diane in my contacts. I had thought I was clever. Thought I was covering all my tracks. But cleverness turns to carelessness when you live too many lies. Mark was pouring himself a glass of wine when my phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His face changed. He did not say a word. Just handed me the phone and walked out to the deck. The message read, "Still pretending? When will you stop lying to yourself? You need me, Rachel." I followed Mark outside. My feet felt like they were made of stone. My voice cracked before I even said a word. He stood with his back to me, staring out at the lake. "Who is Diane?" he asked. I did not answer right away. My silence was louder than anything I could have said. He turned to me slowly. His eyes were not angry. They were tired. Wounded. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Please. Just once." And I did. For the first time since it happened, I told the truth. I told him about the night I said I needed space. About the hotel. About the second time. About Daniel. I left nothing out. Mark said nothing at first. He just looked at me like I was someone he no longer recognized. Then, without a word, he walked back inside and locked the bedroom door. I slept on the couch that night. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to the quiet sounds of the lake, the occasional creak of wood, and the crushing weight of my own breath. The next morning, he was gone. He left early, before the kids woke up. Took the car. Took his silence with him. He did not call. Did not text. I had to explain to the kids that Daddy just needed to get something from town. He came back just after sunset. The kids ran to him like nothing was wrong. But when they were in bed, he sat across from me at the dining table and said something I will never forget. "I do not know who you are anymore, Rachel. I just know I do not trust you." Those words hit harder than any scream or slap ever could. Trust, once shattered, is nearly impossible to rebuild. We drove home the next day in silence. The air between us was thick with unsaid words, unfinished arguments, and invisible cracks. When we pulled into the driveway, Mark took the kids inside. I sat in the car for a long time, staring at our front porch. The same porch where he had kissed me after we bought the house. Where we brought both our babies home from the hospital. Where we laughed and danced in the rain years ago, too young and too in love to imagine we could ever hurt each other like this. But that was before. Before I let temptation win. Before I turned my back on the man who gave me everything. Before I gambled my family's future on a night that I told myself would not matter. Now, everything had changed. And the consequences were just beginning. They say rock bottom has a basement. I never understood that until the weeks that followed our return from the lake house. The silence between Mark and me stretched longer with each passing day. He still came home from work. He still made dinner some nights. He still helped the kids with homework and folded the laundry. But he did it all with a cold, mechanical grace. Like someone going through the motions of a life they no longer believed in. He did not touch me. Did not even look at me the same. It was not hatred that I saw in his eyes, it was vacancy. As though the man who once adored me had checked out of our marriage without even packing a bag. And I could not blame him. I tried to fix things. I tried apologizing again. I cooked his favorite meals. Left notes on the bathroom mirror. Suggested therapy. But no matter what I did, it felt like pouring water into a cup that had long since cracked down the middle. The worst part was pretending in front of the kids. Smiling through dinners. Laughing on cue. Answering their questions without letting my voice tremble. I was not just living a lie anymore, I was performing one. And I hated myself more with each passing day. Then one Thursday evening, everything collapsed. It began like any other night. Mark had taken the kids to soccer practice. I stayed behind to catch up on laundry. I had just tossed a pile of clothes into the dryer when I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, my heart stopped. It was Daniel. He looked the same, sharp, smug, unbothered. Like he had not just thrown a grenade into my life. "What are you doing here?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice from shaking. He smiled. "You stopped answering my texts. I figured I would come check on you." I stepped outside quickly, closing the door behind me. "You need to leave." He leaned in, his voice low. "Why? Because your perfect little world is crumbling? Because you are realizing you cannot erase me that easily? Daniel, please." But before I could finish, headlights washed over the driveway. Mark's car. The kids' voices inside. Doors slamming. Laughter. I froze. Mark stepped out of the car and stared at us. The kids ran inside, oblivious. But Mark stood still, watching me, watching him, as if a puzzle he had been struggling to solve had finally clicked into place. Daniel gave a smug little nod. "Well, that answers that." And then he walked away. I turned to Mark, shaking. "It is not what you think." But he said nothing. Just stared at me like he had never seen me before. Then he went inside, closing the door behind him with a silence louder than any scream. That night, he did not sleep in our bed. He did not even speak to me. The next morning, I woke to a single sheet of paper on the kitchen counter. A legal separation agreement. No words. No threats. Just the cold formality of a man who had reached his limit. I broke down. I cried harder than I ever had. Not because I was losing my marriage, but because I had destroyed it. With one selfish choice. With one night I could never undo. I begged him to reconsider. I told him I would cut Daniel off completely. I would change jobs. Move towns. Do anything. But Mark had already decided. "It is not about Daniel anymore," he said, his voice like gravel. "It is about the fact that you were willing to lie to me and sleep next to me every night while carrying that secret. That is what I cannot forgive." He moved out a week later. The kids stayed with me most nights, but Mark was present. Loving. Kind. He never badmouthed me to them, and for that, I was grateful. But the warmth we once shared was gone, and I knew it would never return. Daniel tried calling again after that. I blocked him. For good. And as for me, I stopped trying to pretend everything was okay. I started therapy. I joined a support group for women who had wrecked their homes with their own hands. I walked through the fire of my consequences, slowly, painfully, with every step reminding me what I had lost. I saw Mark one afternoon at a school event. He smiled politely. I smiled back. For a moment, I remembered the man I used to kiss beneath the bleachers when we were teenagers, the one who wrote me letters before we had cell phones, the one who built a life with me, who believed in me, until I gave him every reason not to. And I realized, some mistakes do not just hurt the ones you love. They haunt you forever. To every woman listening, you might feel unappreciated, lonely, overwhelmed. You might think you deserve more passion, more. Thank you for watching this far. If this story moved you, made you think, or broke your heart even just a little, please hit that subscribe button. It is your support that fuels this channel, and I cannot wait to bring you more powerful, emotional stories that matter. Also, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever made a mistake you wish you could undo? Until next time.